Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we're talking about, so we asked the question, what is the Caribbean, which continues from the last class. Let me forward this in. Yes. So if you go to JTS on our JTS online platform, I said to you the Jamaica Theological Seminary wants the professors to utilize the JTS platform and want students to utilize the online platform. So I've been posting up a lot of the presentations on here. A lot of the studies will be on here. I'm not finished, but you notice that under welcome, you will see the opening lecture for Caribbean Thought 2025. A summarized version of what I discussed last week is on here. And I said part of the reflection in this course, we'll have to define what is Caribbean. And we said that it is not merely a product of colonial extraction and hybridity. And of course, we said that can it reclaim its agency? The idea of agency is important. Agency is very important. Agency is vital. What is agency? Um, I don't know if you read the Afrocentric paradigm. I don't know if you were able to if the concept of agency was discussed, but when you look at the idea of agency is very important. And there's some people, many people have said that black people in the Western world have lost their agency, or there's a lack of agency. Agency is not necessarily institutions. They aren't necessarily institutions. When we talk about agency within the humanities or within Africology or within studies of this nature, we're talking about the ability for a person to act in one's behalf for one's own self-interest. Say for example, uh, I would say that when I moved to the US, I had an experience in Philadelphia where I would always go and dispose of my garbage within a dumpster. I was riding with a young man from Philadelphia, and he said, "What are you doing? You white? Dash for that." There is the idea that black people if don't 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 dispose of their garbage properly. There is the idea that when you go to certain communities, if you don't see a garden, if you're gardening or see a lot of garden, oh, this is a white neighborhood. Those characteristics, those characteristics are synonymous with being white. But not necessarily so. Because when you start to look at the foundations of African culture and African civilization and how the African always behaved, the African was always one with nature. The African spirituality was part of that was with the cosmos, that with the world. And so how he treats his surrounding was very important. And he would act on his own behalf, in his own interest. And that ability to do so comes from a consciousness. But the kind of consciousness that we have now is a black people consciousness, where black people don't know how to garden and how to and have a kind of aesthetics. Black people don't know how to do certain things, so on and so forth. That is a white consciousness that has been imposed on black consciousness, that continue to perpetuate within the black man himself the idea that he does not act in a certain way, although acting in that way helps to improve himself or herself. And so when you look at the Afrocentric paradigm, of course, challenges that thinking, tries to center the African back to Africa, and Africa not one of colonialism and oppression, but one of beauty, one of dignity, one of civilization. Um, but anyways, but what is the but we asked the question, is there an Afro, and of course we left last week asking the question, um, is there an Afrocentric paradigm to the study of Caribbean thought? We're still on the JTS online platform. By the way, you see the Zoom link and recordings here. I have updated it. So this Zoom link has the updated link for Zoom. So if you go on here now, you can click on it. It takes you right to the Zoom. Uh, Coursework and assignments. You see reflection paper one. Is there a paradigm to Caribbean thought? Is there a oops. Is there a paradigm? Is there a paradigm to Caribbean thought and Caribbean studies? One that is Afrocentric within Caribbean academia. Read Mazama's The Afrocentric Paradigm and answer the question in your review of the Afrocentric Paradigm. The article is available on the online portal. It's introduction for people. So that's what I want to piggyback on in a few minutes when I'm finished with this. Then you go to week one, review clip for discussion. You can actually click on the review clip for discussion. Let's click on it. But whatever the case is, Martin Oppenheimer talks about the internal. Hold on a second. Let me ensure that. Can you guys hear the video?
We were able to hear it earlier, but it seems as if you have stopped.
I stopped it. All right, there we go. So I don't know if you guys were able to watch this, but I did post this up for you guys. Mr. Butter, it's a short clip that's available. The full clip is available elsewhere, but this is important. Internal colony. And of course, what happens to that particular continuum of what's going on? Anyway, so that's a short clip. The longer clip is available. And now I'm going to explain what the internal colonies is about. But anyways, but that is, are you still seeing the screen? So I'm gonna start uploading videos to the platform. Conceptualizing the course is available, Caribbean Thought History. Now, under week one, there is something where I have what is Caribbean and who determines this. I was supposed to go through this. I never had a chance to go through this because last week we did this. I did the opening lecture for the class. Looking at, is there a paradigm for the study or to the study? Prepositional error here. Is there a paradigm to this study? For the study is okay. For the study probably is okay because for the study of Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies, should there be one akin to the Afrocentric paradigm, championed by scholars like Dr. Molefi Ashanti, who developed the term Afrocentric paradigm. Afrocentricity was developed, or Afrocentric was developed by W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, so we did that last week, and then I asked, the question was that I said that there are not mere theoretical questions. They are challenged. They challenge.
Sure.
So we did that last week, and then we go down to. So this so we should have also went through this last week. What is the Caribbean and who determines this? And I said that we start with the past in terms of answering this question. We start with the past, but is it one of oppression or one centered on victory? That's a very important question. I mean, that's a very important point. The question is, what is the Caribbean and who determines this? And I say to you, we start with a past. Of course, I mean, the saying is true. You don't know where you're going until you know until you know where you're coming from. And of course, Norman Gervin in the Caribbean Reader said that the Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. So the question is, what shall we be in the 21st century? Of course, we said that the Caribbean is an invention from, I mean, the Caribbean is an invention. Do we start from 1492, 1493, 1494? Do we start from when Christopher Columbus came to Haiti? or other parts of the Caribbean or to the US? Do we start in do we start in 1565 when during the Spanish Wars and Europe took over several parts of the of the Caribbean that Spain had controlled? Do we begin in the 1800s or in 1801 or 1802 or three when Haiti became the first colony, the slave that led the first successful slave revolt? And then you ask the question: did Haiti really have a successful slave revolt? Did Haiti really have a successful slave revolt? And by the way, you can click on Caribbean History Overview. Oh my God, I didn't want that. Ah, and and then when you click on it, it's oh my God, I already have it open now. Uh, Whatever. Mm. But yeah, where do you begin? Do you begin um uh do you begin in 1801, 1802 or three? Do you begin when Haiti became independent? Do you begin in not in 1833 uh when when the Emancipation Proclamation was written, or do you begin in 1865 when the proclamation actually reached the Caribbean and it was actually abolished? Sorry, the abolishment was in 1833. The proclamation was or the Emancipation Proclamation was in 1865. Do you begin there, 64, 65? When all the slaves left the plantation, and then, of course, by 1850s, you have the coming of the Chinese, the indentured laborers in the Caribbean, Chinese and the Indians. And on the matter of Chinese and Indians, there is a matter of the Chinese investment in the Caribbean today, and the the fact that the US or Donald Trump is asking the Chinese to leave, or people are saying that it poses a threat to US Jamaica relationship. I mean, that is something that I would love to discuss with the class, because the textbook for this class is neoliberalism, and in the book Neoliberalism, I talk about how the Caribbean and Jamaica and global South countries in particular, and Jamaica with a case study, how we have suffered over the years since 1962 or even prior to 1962 under globalization. Promises that globalization was supposed to be the sine qua non of economic development. Jamaica has, and many countries in the Caribbean have experienced dependent capitalism. Um, do we start with that? In fact, so I should have gone through that last week. Let me stop sharing my screen and let me share my screen again, and let me go to Caribbean Thought. There we go. And share my screen. Wait, stop share my screen. Share my screen. Caribbean Thought. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Share screen. So this is available on the online platform. We start with the past, but is it one of oppression? And I said, here's a timeline in chronological order of Caribbean history with all the events and notable figures included. The Caribbean region, and I started with prior to the 1490s. And of course, where do we begin? Do we begin with the 1490s? The Caribbean region was inhabited by nomadic people such as and I put nomadic inverted commas, because nomadic could be seen as a very negative word. Now people, oh, you are a nomad. And a nomad are people who roam the earth, go from place to place. sometime without meaning, but it wasn't without meaning because um, the Taino people were seasonal people, and their economic arrangement evolved or revolved around the seasons, and for them the technological arrangement was simple, but is but how in terms of we ethnocentric with well with in a certain of in a we ethnocentrically or I mean sorry we use our ethnocentrism to impose a kind of idea on nomads or people in certain arrangements. The Taino people, we call them nomads, and we call the Africans tribal. We use these are English terms that we associate with people that continue a consciousness that perpetuate a demeaning that perpetuate demeaning their position in society. But anyways, we won't get to that. We'll get to that later on when I start to look at how we define black people as African people as black, African people as black, and how I have a problem with the idea of black. But we'll get to that later on. But we are still looking at how where do we begin when we begin to study Caribbean? Do we start with and there's an assignment I will give you that looks at that explores islands of the Caribbean, but we talk about that. Um, but prior to the 1490s, the Caribbean region was inhabited by nomadic people such as the Arawakan or Taino people who lived in small groups and traveled along the coastline and across the Americas. They were largely peaceful with minimal combat skills and tools for fighting wars. African sailors came to the Caribbean and history for us begin. And then I say, oh, okay, and I stopped there. Actually, yes. When I wrote this, we stopped there. We stopped with the American Indians. And then there's another article where I talk about timeline history from Arawaks to Africans. So we start with the Arawakan people, and then Christopher Columbus meeting the Arawaks, discovering the Caribbean. Now, of course, Christopher Columbus did not deny that there were Taino people living there, although they say that we discovered the Caribbean, we discovered the Americas. It was a discovery because they were at the time. Remember, they are using Eurocentric ideas and promoting a worldview that is Eurocentric. And if white European people didn't find it, it didn't exist in the world. The map of the world, the Western map of the world, never had the Caribbean or the Americas. Hold on. Hello, Renaldo McKenzie. Sorry about that. Um, so there was no map. So when Christopher Columbus discovered the Caribbean and the Americas, it was a discovery for them it was a discovery for them and the world. Nothing exists in the world unless the Europeans or the Caucasian discovered it. Of course, if you read the book Occidentalism and Orientalism by Ian Baruma and Edward Said, they make reference to that. If you read the presentation to Parliament by Balfour in the 1655, then they make reference to how he advocated and justified the colonization of Britain over Egypt. Sorry, Kamit, but they called it Egypt. And in his presentation to Parliament, he said, nothing exists in Egypt unless we make it, we did it. And if something existed, it's not for their sake. But anyway, whatever the case is. But we're talking about what is the Caribbean? Where do we begin? and then of course we stop at the Arawakan tribes and so on. But then I added, prior to the Spanish people coming here, prior to the Europeans coming here, African sailors came to the Caribbean, and history for okay. So there were African sailors who came here. Now, not much was written or documented concerning African sailors, but of course, why would you find that? Why would why it especially we live in the Caribbean, that a country that has held on to its European indoctrinations. Why would we find any information about African sailors that came to the Caribbean? And the next, anyway, so, but whatever, my timeline of the Caribbean history will begin with the idea that African sailors came to the Caribbean. So there was interaction between, I'm sorry, guys, I'm so sorry. We'll begin with that, and then it behoves on me now to do my history. I will talk to you later on about when I was at Georgetown University doing a Doctor of Liberal Studies, looking at Greek history, the foundations of Western civilization, and we talked about Plato and the Iliad and looking at Herodotus and the Theogony and Thucydides and so on and so forth. Nowhere did we talk about Africa. But I never thought about Africa. The only thing I knew about Africa was that Africa had some tribal people, and when the image of Africa, when you talk, what is the image of Africa? The image of Africa was the image of tribal people with no brains, just like a monkey, maybe, I don't know, or people who live in tribes who have no sophistication and technology. But I mean, we talk about one's imagination and the idea of memory. I don't know if I'm going to have time to talk about the idea of memory in this class, because remember, we talk about consciousness as well earlier. I talk about the idea of agency. The idea of agency is important. I'm not finished talking about. I'm going to have you guys share about in your papers the Afrocentric paradigm, but I wanted the idea of agency is very important. And the idea of Afrocentricity is important because you talk about the development of consciousness. Very important, the development of consciousness. And I said to you last week, we live in within. We said I said to you, we the problem of the problem with the black man, the black and brown man, is that in the world today is that they are not necessarily black and brown people, but they are people with a history and a past that does not begin with or is not that does not begin with the color or does not begin with black, but it begins with a history that is a sophisticated history. Whether from if you're talking about, and of course, when we look at the Caribbean, we're talking about they're different. They're Indian people, so they have Eastern Indian history. They have the Chinese people, so they have Chinese history. You have African people, so they have Black history, African history from the time of Kamit. But nowhere are we exposed. When you look at Caribbean education, we don't talk about Kamit really. Rastafarians and people like Muta Baruka, you might hear them talk about Osiris and Osiris, and you say, what is he talking about? And the law of thermodynamics, and you think, and they say, he's absolutely he's not making any sense, but not necessarily so. The education system is actually is very strategic when you start to study people like Michel Foucault, who is a postmodernist, who's a critical thinker, who talks about the idea of how the marriage between education, knowledge, and institutions. You know, institutions are created to help to perpetuate a kind of knowledge base that continues privilege, power, and position. Um, but then, so fine. So now that we know that African sailors come to the world, came to the Caribbean, then we find out the people in the Caribbean that the Columbus came to discover what in their history, what in their culture and reality was a perpetuation of the African influence that they had already come to know. And then we can and now we can think about the urban Indian Heritage Society and some of their allegations or their assertions. And we had them here presenting in the class before. As I said to you last week, I hope that they can come back. They are very good friends of mine. Hope they can come back. The Urban Indian Heritage Society, they are now claiming, and they have an organization now, and they have big influence now. People like um, um that Kyrie Irving, who's now saying he's an Indian or urban Indian, who has big influence from people like him. But they're now and they're now saying that, especially even in the Caribbean, many Caribbean people there's a big nativist culture. A lot of the people in the Caribbean who say that they're black or come from Africa, they're actually part of the Taino culture, the original people that already existed, and many of them may have had some influence from the Africans who came, because in 1655, when the British came to to the Jamaican various parts of the Caribbean and dominated the Spanish, many of the African people fled to the mountains, and some of the Africans who they brought here over time also found their way to the maroon villages that were free and independent. But of course, we also said that it could be 1492 to 1493, as we trace Caribbean history. We talk about the reinvention of the Caribbean within the New World. Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, bringing European knowledge, religion, and people. His ulterior motives included the pursuit of gold, profit, greed, and international competition for capital. So, I mean, many people have a problem with people saying that Christopher Columbus discovered the New World, but in Western history, he discovered it because it wasn't on their map. Okay, and that shows when you define theft, and colonization involves a kind of theft and a kind of wiping out of history. So that now as years from now, the theft you barely can see traces of that thread of theft, corruption, and manipulation. Because okay, so people cannot file claim or grievances against their theft because for them they discovered it didn't exist before. So no one can sue or claim the land or the property because they discovered it. Not like how Israel can go back to Palestine, and in 1946, 47, and claim part of Palestine, Jerusalem, as their own, reclaim it because it existed before. But you could use a people. And the only thing now is, can the people bear claim to the land? But anyways, 1500s to the 1800s, the Atlantic slave trade brought enslaved Africans to the Caribbean to work on sugar plantations, transforming the region into a sugar plantation society. And then, of course, 1600s to the 1700s, there was a rise of heroes and maroons, escaped slaves who formed independent communities. Dr. Bookman was brought to Jamaica from Senegambia. He was an African priest, could speak. He could. He was skilled in the in in the Muslim language. He was he could read and write. He was drafting and big and booming and fit, and he actually escaped from Jamaica and went to Haiti. He was the one that started the first Haitian rebellion. He was the one that's the father of the voodoo tradition. Very powerful guy. We'll talk about him a little bit more. He escaped to Haiti, became a voodoo priest, and led the first major slave revolt in Haiti on August 14, 1791. He was killed around November 1791. Um, Haitian Revolution in 1791 to 1804, yeah, the revolution leading to Haiti's independence and becoming the first Black revolt republic in 1804. But anyways, we'll go back to the timeline. So this is the timeline. It's available on the web on the and you can download it. There's a file and you can download it, so it's available. Caribbean Thought History Overview, and we will revisit it as we go through this course. Okay, so I will stop this and I will go back to share. Go to go back to JTS online platform. Go back to share and we were going through the so week two. So that's week one. What is Caribbean? Who determines this? You guys can publish that document in your own time. Week two, critical thinking and Caribbean thought. Today we begin the lectures in Caribbean thought. Is there a paradigm to the study? Better yet, should there be a paradigm? The answer may lie at the end. Listen, this is important. The answer may lie where at the end, but we will begin to explore the question as we contend for a Caribbean that is unique to a people, a place, and that gives voice to a world adjudicating its future. That is important. The answer, the answer may lie at the end of the course, but we will begin to explore this question as we contend for a Caribbean that is unique to a people, a place, and that gives voice to a world. So a Caribbean that is unique to a people and a place, but a Caribbean that gives voice. In other words, we're not going to only be thermometers, but we're going to be thermostats. People that give voice to a world, people that contribute to culture, that contribute to technology, contribute to information, that make contributions to a world adjudicating its futures. Okay, that's important. No, we have the Afrocentric paradigm that's available here. I'm not going to go through the Afrocentric paradigm. I'll go through it briefly, but not right now. I'm going to give you guys some chance to talk in a second. Then there is the reflection. I have a reflection paper. So I actually did this particular paper as well. What I'm asking you to do, I actually did it and I submitted it to Dr. Mazama herself, the woman who wrote the Afrocentric paradigm, who is the head of Temple University's Afroculture department. And so I wrote a reflection there. It's called Introduction to the Afrocentric Paradigm. You can read it later on. I probably will go through it with you guys when I introduce myself and who I am or whatever. And then under that, there is another paper under that I hope to go through for this week's class. It's called The Inaccuracies of Afrocentrism and the 7 Basic African Cultural Characteristics of Karinga. In Afrocentric paradigm, I think she talks about it. Sorry, Dr. Mazama talks about it, but we will get into that. What many people now, my initial reflections or ideas about the Afrocentric paradigm left me baffled, perplexed, and apoplectic. And I was reading, and I started a podcast looking at reflections in Afrocology, and it was just a lot coming at me at once. It was just crazy. I mean, it's the more I said to you guys, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, man. And it's a lot. It's just I give God thanks for what I'm exposed to. And sometimes there's so much I know, so much I have been exposed to, and I'm here teaching a class, and it's like I have so much information I want to give you so much one time. I don't know how to organize it, so I take my time, and I'm open and flexible with you guys. But the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So as I became exposed to Afroecology, I was asking myself several questions. I mean, shall we go back to church? Shall we backslide? Am I still a Marxist? Because I thought I was a Marxist because I embraced Marxism. And when you start to study Caribbean independence and nationalism and so on, many of them were Marxists. And I mean, Michael Manley, Fidel Castro, Sheila James, Walter Rodney, all of them, they were all Marxists. Um, many of them, many nationalists embraced Marxist views, and then now I have become a postmodernist. And but now when you start to study Afroecology and Afrocentric paradigm, they now start to question postmodernism and Marxism because I said it's. I won't say why. I'm not going to say why. And so they say, okay. So now I'm saying, okay, wow. So I I'm trying to move away from being Eurocentric and white, but in doing so, I'm still using a lens to view my world. What lens am I using? And then, of course, I start to reread Frantz Fanon, who wrote Wretched of the Earth and Black Skin's White Mask. And, you know, and I probably I should I'm gonna unlock my screen because you should see me when you see me talking. I'm very passionate. Okay. But I'm not even ready for the class. I'm dressed down. So I don't want to unlock my screen yet. But I'm very passionate right now. I wish you could see me. But French Fanon in white skin, white masks, and Wretched of the Earth that talks about tabula rasas. And I got it wrong the first time. When he was talking about tabula rasas, about starting as a blank slate, the Caribbean must start anew. The history of man. The Caribbean must. I'm talking off the top of my head. I'm not reading anything, just so you know. God is just filling my brains, and He pours it out. But the Caribbean must start a new history of man. He wrote this in the night between 1955 and 1960. What happened in 1955? When you start to look at the chronological history that I gave you just now, in 1955, the Bandung Conference. The Bandung Conference. In fact, let me stop sharing my screen and go back to share my screen and go back to this share. Go back to 1955. In 1959, the Bandung Conference, where Caribbean leaders joined other leaders from Asia and Africa to promote non-alignment and cooperation. Non-alignment and cooperation. And this is important. This is an important point I'm about to make here. So 959, the Bandung Conference. I I'm good. I did a podcast about China. Uh, I did a podcast about I did a podcast about China. Very interesting podcast about China. Um, and in the podcast, I meant to in the new book that's about to come out, which is the second book to Neoliberalism, book one, that I wrote with Professor Martin Oppenheimer. I talked about who ruled the world, who ruled the world. That was, and I wrote the book a year ago. I've been delaying it, but I should have published it. Now today we see many investments in China. What's your thought about Chinese investment in Jamaica? What lessons can we learn from foreign investment in the Caribbean? We see the IMF. Now, my book is about foreign investment in Jamaica and the Caribbean and how that has dogged the Caribbean. That's what the book is about. Neoliberalism, book one. Okay. The second thing is the book talks more not just about that. The issue about China and what's going on in terms of Chinese investment in the Caribbean. Why is it that countries like Jamaica is heavily dependent on foreign investment like that of China and that of the US, these superpowers, who are always at odds with each other? I asked the question, should China leave Jamaica, does it pose a problem for Jamaica? Um, and of course, the, the the modernization of Jamaica means, I mean, what is the aesthetics of Jamaica? What's Jamaica going to look like in terms of all of this development? It's going to look like China? I don't know. That's a different question. Does it speak to the culture of Jamaica? That's a different question. I'm getting some in terms of postmodernism or modernization or modernity, in terms of the places and the spaces and the looks and how buildings are and the investment and where it comes from, what cultural identity shaped in terms of our buildings. But anyways, moving beyond that, yes, I want you. I mean, I would love to hear your ideas about the Chinese investment in Jamaica and the fact that, does that pose a problem? Yes or no? Why or why not? As Caribbean academics, as Caribbean scholars who are now exposed to the Afrocentric paradigm and to a particular lens that centers your perspective, then the question is appropriate. Does it pose a problem? No, I have an answer, but I'm not going to tell you the answer. I mean, not an answer. It's not an answer. I have an opinion, which is okay. That's all I have. That's all we can provide in this class. Opinions, but opinions help to shape civilizations. All right.
But
Um,
sir,
go ahead.
if you don't mind me saying, we've seen the Chinese investment in African nations and our countries on the African continent, and those developments have been far more progressive than what far more progressive and futuristic. I'm not talking about type of the type of investment, but the way they invest is much more progressive, much more rapid, and it helped to build a nation.
Okay. Now, this is important because when you look at Jamaica, the investment by in terms of the aid and the investment in Jamaica over the years by Canada, the UK, and the US, and now you look at Chinese investment over the years, um, that that has not necessarily benefited. That has created mixed results for some Caribbean islands have had a different approach in terms of how they receive investment and the arrangement they make. The question I would ask is, um, has that how long? I mean, I mean, what is the futuristic development or benefit or gain for Jamaica in particular, or I mean, you talk about Africa. I don't see that kind of Chinese heavily investment invested in other Caribbean islands. Um, Africa is a different situation, but how is it benefiting you said development, but is do we is I mean, in terms of income inequality and poverty and high levels of returns in terms of Africa, are Africans experiencing that? Because say, for example, Jamaica, the highways, they're not getting any money from the highway. The money goes back to Africa in terms of the so a lot of the investments, where is the money going? Anyway, yes.
Good day, sir. Uh, my question are this is puzzling my brain. Isn't it fair to say that China does have right to Jamaica, or Chinese do have right to Jamaica, just like the Africans, since they were brought here, are forced to come here?
What do you mean the Chinese? What Chinese you talking about? The Chinese Jamaicans who are now here because of, who are ancestors of
Eh,
the descendants of Chinese indentured laborers.
Yeah, so isn't it okay for their people from their nation to help to come in and invest in their country as well? Wouldn't we consider Chinese, how to put it? They're here. They were forced to be here. They're here with us. We said out of many one people, right? And
That's an
since they're
interesting point
here,
that you have made a very important point actually. That's a very important point that you've made. You're saying that because their people were here. They have people. That's a very important point. So they still have there's some type of cultural connection to the Caribbean because a lot of Chinese indentured laborers came here. So you're saying that they have a part to play in terms of investment in Jamaica. But that is not why they are investing in Jamaica. Okay. That is not why. And only 0.1% of the population is Chinese. So, okay. Who is laughing? I see somebody laughing.
Me, sir. That's how you answering the question. It's not making more.
I know, but
But it tickles my brain. It makes me think. Listening to you and teaching it, it is expanding my brain to think outside the box. So yes.
yes, yeah, but this is good. But this is good. But as I was talking about the Bandung, but anyway, but this is very important. I'm going to talk about in 1959, the Bandung Conference. Caribbean leaders joined other leaders from Asia and Africa to promote non-alignment and cooperation. Many African countries, many um, countries that were independent came together because they're fighting for independence, fighting for liberation. Frantz Fanon, who wrote Wretched of the Earth. I have that book here and very good. I'm going to talk about these guys later on. Frantz Fanon wrote about we must begin the history. We must begin a new history of man. We must be like as like, and then he talked about, he used the term tabula rasa, which is a psychological word, blank slate. If you study psychology and ever think about Sigmund Freud talks about the psychoanalytic theories. Frantz Fanon was one of the first and the father of Caribbean psychoanalytic theory, of combining colonialism with psychoanalysis. So for those of us who do it and by the way, I hear some of you were saying, by the way, when you study Afrocentrism and Afrocentric paradigm, now some of you may even some of you may even feel away using APA, the American Psychological Association, using their style to write, their style of writing, their style of documenting and referencing. If you know me, I'm going to tell you, use any style you want to use. Don't limit yourself. Okay. I saw some of you were just fighting yourself about, oh, what's going. I am a postmodernist. Anyways, know your professors. But moving right along, in 1959, very important. So Frantz Fanon says, start as tabula rasas. They came together, all the countries, Jamaica, India, all of these countries, Algeria, all of these countries came together to advocate, to write a new manifesto, to envision envision new independent nations, the rise of nationalism, nation states, sovereign countries. But there was an irony. So so they came together, and Frantz Fanon said, as you come together to talk about independence, don't negotiate an independence on the virtues of the masters. Don't use elaborate ceremonies and gifts and start a country. Say, for example, Israel wanted to give Palestine independence, but but they would only give it to them so long as they acquiesce a kind of leadership, a leadership that they agree to. Okay, fine. Haiti got independence. Fine. Tongo got independence. But they didn't like the independence that they got. It was, okay, fine, you have your own country, you can rule your own country, you can carve out your own future, you can run your own country, but it has to be one based on our ideas, our philosophy, our ideology. The problem with Venezuela, the problem with Cuba, was that they were adopting a different political, economic and political system. One that was antithetical to the American Western political ideology and system. And so they slapped embargoes and so on and so forth. And I said to you last week, what would Jamaica be? Maybe Jamaica would be like Haiti today if we had taken our independence and did negotiate our independence so that we can maintain a British society.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
What do
No,
you,
sir, no funny. You said
no, you
team
know what I mean,
instead
Chantal.
of
Chantal,
negotiate.
you
No,
know
sir.
you know what I mean by that. You know, but it is deep.
Sir,
It is
go
deep.
ahead.
It is deep. Okay.
So, sir, just scratch the surface just a little bit, you know?
The
You
point that
can't
I'm
say
making,
something like that and
it is a deep point because you know it is the truth. Okay. The society that we have inherited is one that perpetuates and maintains. And I said to you, the reason why Tongo and the reason why they tried to they assassinated Walter Rodney was because they were trying to develop a communist system or a system that was anti-Western political ideology. They wanted a different system, and so that was a problem for them. The independence that they wanted Jamaica to adopt was the independence that the British country wanted Jamaica to adopt. The kind of independence that France wanted Togo and these other countries was the kind of independence that they wanted it to adopt. The kind of country that America wanted Cuba and and Venezuela and still want to be was the kind of country they wanted them to be. Countries that 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 had a service economy that does not rival that of the post the post developed country. Okay, the postmodern country.
so, sir, then you're saying that the deterioration of Haiti over all of these years is due to um, a mastermind of a setup from years prior,
Well, I
basically.
mean, first of all, Haiti is not controlled by Haiti today. Haiti control has it, and then of course, you will hear me talk about, is Haiti really independent? Because after they got independence, they were nobody recognized their independence because no nation stand alone. We are part of a wider framework. No other country recognized their independence, and so they couldn't. You can't operate in a world like that. So they had to make a deal to pay France money, okay, for millions and billions of years until they agreed to pay off this debt. They finally paid it off in the 1940s. And of course,
So
later
essentially, Haiti bought their freedom from France.
yes, yes.
All right.
This is critical thinking at work. Well, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you Haiti bought it. This is not my role. My job is to expose you to the material, expose you to the resources, and for you to make up your mind and to share my opinions. But you make it. The only thing I will want to know is if I ask you, what is the global north? You should be able to define that. What is the global south? You should be able to define that. What is structural adjustment? Theory of structural adjustment, you should be able to define that. What is Pan-Africanism? What's nationalism? What's capitalism? What's Marxism? You should be able to define that. Okay. If I ask you uh, those simple questions, you should be able to. But outside of that, everything else is really lends itself to a perspective that is rooted in critical theory, thinking about thinking and rethinking what was previously thought. This class, I will expose you to a lot. I will expose you to stuff that I was never exposed to until after my my long academic. I'm a career student. I'm always reading and writing and studying and reflecting. So as I learn it, I share it with you. But this is important as I talk about the Bandung Conference in the 1950s. All these countries wanted independence, and all the non-independent the colonies came together. All the non-aligned countries that were not part of the the Western nation states that made up that were in 1944. So actually, in 19, I did. Oh, I usually put 1944. The formation of the United Nations. When they formed the United Nations, none of these countries that were at the Bandung Conference were there because these nations control these other nations. So these nations in the formation of the United Nations, and they created a world order. They created a new world order. after the okay, with the Russia and Canada, Russia and the US and France and Germany, the UK, so they all created a new world order. And in Germany, okay, and the new world order have each of these superpowers controlling various areas of the world. Um, of course, today you find, and of course, today you
Oh,
find,
good night, sir.
and I
Good
see,
evening, sir.
yeah, go ahead, Idras.
All right. So, something I want to be clear because I see one of the students asking you the question about Haiti by the independence.
Yeah, and right,
So,
Idras is from Haiti, so he has some. Go ahead.
right. So, from history, because our biggest problem is that Asian history is being wrote by the person that we beat up or the person that we fight for our independence. So we beat up France, and France is the one who have to vote, who have to write our history. So that is a very bad thing for the Haitian community because we do not know well the history of the country because most of the thing is come from there. But when you come with the things that the buying of the independence is that Haiti was independent in 1804,
Right.
but before that we were independent in 1803, since after the First War where we beat the France on them. And then in 1804, we were waiting on 1804 to celebrate the independence. So that when the 1st of January 1804, it was the celebration of the independence. So now there is several presidents that is come after Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and all these presidents trying to make contact with France again. But the purpose of France was to put Haiti in slave again. So they sent plenty commission and stuff like that. And here is called Jean-Pierre Boyer, which was a president that who was against Dessalines, who was against Pétion, who was against Christophe, and now this citizen that they consider him as a French citizen because of the thing that he's doing. When we read the history properly, and we will see this one do everything according to what France was asking. They were pressuring him to pay to pay for France to recognize our independence, and which he did. He paid for the recognition of the independence, not to give us the independence. That is the point that I would like to just make out. For the recognition of the independence from the other country or even France, especially, so he paid for the recognition, but he did not pay for the independence. Because after independence, if we look at that Jean-Jacques Dessalines, which is our hero, he even, when they come to him with this idea, he wrote them to tell them if they have any black people enslaved in the country, he ready to buy it from them. So that was Dessalines. But after Dessalines die now, the thing become thing and is the governor, is the people, because what we need to know is that Dessalines died is because of these same people that they were the one who killed Dessalines.
Idras, this is
Because
good.
of the
This is good.
because
I
of
would
the
love to have a debate with you on this. But I wasn't the one
uh,
that brought the idea about but the fact of the matter is, yes, you're right that Haiti had to pay some, what is it, how much money? Is it 90 million or some hundred and something million?
115 million francs.
50 million
Franc.
independence to be recognized. Well, not just, I mean, I think that, and for them, Haiti was saying, I mean, and of course, French was saying it's their land and they stole the land from Sorry, France.
Right. So
They landed. They stole the land from France.
yes, let's say they're from Africa. They
Okay,
did not
from
have no
Africa.
land. It's them brought them to the land. They need to pay for that.
Right.
Right.
So they say that they're from Africa. But of course the people from the Urban Indian Heritage Society are not claiming that some people who live in Haiti were natives of Haiti or related to the original people that were there. So they should not have to be required to pay any money. And the France never, and who did France pay? Did France pay any money when they acquired those lands? No, because those lands never existed. No one can claim property to a land that never existed. You see what I'm talking about? That is why it's the language is important, documentation, discovery. They said it was discovered. After the discovery, then you can do the people will have to make claim to the land. So the Haitians stole the land, and because they stole it, they have to pay it. So in a sense, the black people who came from Africa, isn't that interesting though, Edras? The black people came from Haiti,
Yeah,
turned
there is a.
around,
It is
turned
a very
around and
interesting history.
stole Africa. Sorry, stole Haiti from the French. And the French were like the US at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the time, that time, in the 18 in that in the 18 early part of the beginning of the 1800s, the dominant country at the time was France, not
Yeah.
Napoleon. And the Haitians. These Haitians, African people, turn around and stole Haiti
Mm-hmm.
from the French. Is it fair to say that, Idris?
Um, what I will say, it is not fair to say. Even before you were talking about D.T. Bookman.
Yes.
If you can see the crime that these people did to our ancestors, we cannot call that they steal it or they stole it, because they are being paid what they have done to these people. You can understand you being a slave and then you just bury the whole body of the person and leave the head alone and throw syrup or honey on the head of the person for just ants to come and eat this person the way that it is? Alive?
That's true. But can I make another point to you guys? Difference between no, this is important, Idris, because and Chantal, thank you, and all you guys about the issue of discovery and theft. I said to you earlier, it's important. It was not discovered until Christopher Columbus discovered, until the Europeans discovered it. So no claim can be made to the land. So after when the Haitians took the land from the French, the Haitians took Haiti. Isn't that interesting? Haitians took Haiti from the French, and it's a theft. Anyways, when the Haitians took Haiti,
I'm with it, is that the people that they met there, which is the Tainos or the
yes, the
Tainos and
tidings,
the
yes.
and things, but they still have a group of people here that can claim that is the land too, because they're still on the land.
There we go. That's the point I'm making. It is as if they don't exist.
Even now,
In
they
fact,
still exist.
what they write in history is that they committed a genocide. But there was
No,
no
even now,
genocide. That was
that is
a
not a.
strategy. That was a strategy. They say they killed off the people because so that no claim can be made to the land.
That's why I told you at the beginning. Our biggest problem is that our history is written by our colonial or the person that was colonize us.
But
So
let me ask
these
the question. I heard that
France,
Jamaica. Yes, that's true. I'm going to talk
the
about what's going
France,
on
we beat
with
in France, and
Haiti.
then he
That's
is the
true. And
one
by the
who.
way, Idris, hold on. Haiti and Dominican Republic. I'll talk about that and how the Spanish and the Catholic Church, sorry, the Spanish, or how the European people try to have tried over the years to bring about or to develop and to mushroom the bad blood and the divide that exists between Haiti and DR today. We'll talk about that, but not now. I won't talk about that now. But I heard that Jamaica
I
wants
say,
independence from the Britain, and I heard that Britain is saying that not independence. They want to sever ties with the Queen or with the monarchy completely. And I'm hearing that that Jamaica may have to now pay a debt or pay money, or because they are crown lands, that that many of the lands belong to the crown. Are you guys hearing that? Students, hello?
Yes, sir, we're here. Well, yes, we're hearing you.
Are you hearing that?
I wasn't aware of that, sir.
Julian?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you said you weren't aware?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Okay, we need to. Okay, I will do. I am hearing of that. I'm reading of that. I'll do. I will explore that some more. But
Okay,
go ahead, Julian.
sir. No, sir. I just said okay.
Right. So, anyway, but let me continue with because let me stop sharing my screen. I was making a point about the Bandung conference, and and that tabula rasa said the history of man, we must start the new history of man, which must start anew. We must start anew the history of man as tabula rasas, as a blank slate. That's what Fanon said when all the non-aligned nations came together in 1955, 59 to think about a new nation state, independent nation states. That I think that was in 1955. That at the same time, in Jamaica and the Caribbean, they were talking about the Treaty of Chagaramos, um, um, uh, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago. They were all thinking about coming together to start one nation, one independent nation. In fact, Cayman was part of Jamaica, was the 15th parish in Jamaica. But eventually, they shelved that. Jamaica pulled out because everybody wanted to go it alone. Wanted to go it alone. They couldn't agree as to where of the center would be, or everybody wanted, the, to stroke their own egos. That's the issue of the downfall and the pitfall with nationalism. The nationalists, everybody wanted to be leaders in their own poles, and so, anyways, but I do. But part of the problem that nationalists met in the 1970s was because they decided to go it alone. They did not recognize that they needed to have been unified so that they can deal with the challenges of the 1970s and the 1980s, starting with OPEC, um, the oil producing countries that had cut their surplus, cut their production of oil, and which drove up the price. And that created a shortfall, and many Caribbean countries that never had windfall profits that came over from the bauxite and came over from all of the growth. They had squandered it um, by adopting a populist program. And so they had to go to the US, okay, go to the people who had always kept them down for help. And through the IMF and the World Bank, they got loans and created the idea of debt. They have always used debt, the same debt that they used with Haiti, the same debt that they used with Caribbean islands, who, although they got independence, they said, you think you were getting independence? No. By 1962, sorry, by 1970, in the 1970s, the irony was that independence, if these nationalists knew that what was happening in terms of globalization and then OPEC, they would have never probably gone alone. They would have decided to have a united independence, a unity government. The Caribbean needed a unity government in their fledgling independence. But anyways, we hope that you can read this. You can go ahead and continue reviewing the JTS online. I'm trying to populate it so that you guys can have it available and make sense of it anytime. Oops, what's this?
Sir,
Go ahead.
Mr. McKenzie, I think that makes so much sense. If they had done that, I think the Caribbean would today be a force to be reckoned with, and they had the right leadership when they were pushing towards freedom from slavery and emancipation and all of these things. I
Yeah.
think it would have been I think it would have been so good.
Yeah, but I mean, but I find that even today, with look what's going on in Haiti, we have been advocating for a Haitian-led solution. What is the Caribbean doing as a country to help their Haitian brothers? I mean, I don't. I mean, the Caribbean people. We talk about unity, but we are not as united. We don't even know what's going on in in the Caribbean.
I see efforts at times with like food and clothing and stuff, but I think the Caribbean should probably be pushing more towards legislation,
Yeah.
getting their team together of legislators to help Haiti in that context, instead of
Part of the
just saying
problem with Haiti is that Haiti is governed by people external to Haiti. Just so you know.
that's it.
Just so
That's
you
it.
know, Haiti is not governed by Haiti. There is a core group of countries that govern Haiti. The US is one of them. I think Brazil was one time, Canada, France. Haiti is so you question, is Haiti really independent, Idris? Is Haiti really independent? Okay. Or
Yeah, Haiti is, I don't know how to call that, because we just forget about who we are, and then we sell the country back again to to the to the people that were colonized us, the people that was treating us very bad, and we sell the country back to them because of hard leadership, because of people that will come in power, who don't understand our history, who don't know our country. Our biggest problem is that Haiti never led by a true Asian. And to explain what I'm saying to you is that it's mostly people that go and study overseas, being brainwashed by the colonial countries and them, and then come back and people vote them as president. And then when they come, they don't serve the population, but they serve the master. So yes, we can say in a sense we are independent, but in a sense, but
but no, well,
but
I would say people who go overseas because I'm overseas. What if I decide to go back to Jamaica? The only and right now I'm teaching Jamaica. Say, oh my God, it's people like him that is mashing up Jamaica.
no, but so our you know our history well. So if you look at well, every president that trying to work for the mass, for the population, they are being killed or they are being exit from the country. So that is our history. Every time you stand to do something for the population, for the poor people, for the less fortunate, you are not able to stay. They have to run you out. The last example we have is the last president that were killed. You telling me the US have the most?
Let me tell you, if you guys read the Afrocentric paradigm and what Afroecologists and Afrocentrists are saying, the problem is that they have turned black people into Africans into black people. They have turned Africans into black people, and we have normalized, and we have developed a normalization of a kind of blackness that continues to keep us. I mean, that keeps us down. Um, we have and in a sense, it's a kind of blackness that is devoid of. Write this word down: agency. Agency, not agency in the institutional sense of the term, but agency in terms of Caribbean studies, subaltern studies, or in Africology or Caribbean studies. Agency, we're talking about the ability of one to act in one's behalf, for one's betterment, to improve oneself. So if Haitians have agency, then they would want to act in a way that improves themselves, that better their society. If they have agent, but it starts with a consciousness. a consciousness that centers them, that reorients their minds from an idea of being black to an idea of being African. African in the sense, the African that gave the world civilization, the African that gave the world Pythagoras theorem, the Africa that gave the world religion and theology and philosophy and reason, the world that gave that gave that gave the world philosophy and the classics. Yes, that world. If we understand that is who the African is, then, and we are armed with that kind of consciousness, that into how we treat each other and how we treat, in fact, when we think about women, how we treat women, when we understand how in the Africa woman was always, women were the woman. Womanhood is different from motherhood. Manhood is different from fatherhood. So the man could be a father, could be a woman. The man could be a mother. God, man, we're talking about mother of the gods. That's a very important concept in Africology. And when you start to develop Afrocentrism within your Caribbean studies and your Caribbean perspectives, that is what I'm hoping to do. I'm exposing you to these things and I'm exposed to these, and some of them, and I'm going to admit, some of these things are relatively new. I only met them in 2023, 2022, 2023. And I have a long history of studies, but a lot of my studies, academic studies and philosophy and theology ideologies, have been influenced by European or US-centric grounding and foundation up to 2023. It was all European ideology. Okay. So this is interesting. This is quite powerful. As we start to study these things. I'm going to take a quick 5 minutes break, but before I take that break, let me see if I finished. So I was sharing my screen looking at the Bandung Conference in 1955, talking about the history of man. You must start a new history of man. And then I actually was talking about China and the problem of China. I was asking, is there a problem with China development? Chinese development in the Caribbean. Of course, up to now, the Caribbean has not reached a place where they can invest in each other and themselves. They still need to rely on one of these superpowers. Although Bob Marley said where did Bob Marley said this, Chantel? Bob Marley said, "I don't look to the east and I don't look to the west. I look to the iron eye. I don't look to the east and I don't look to the west. I look to the iron eye." Talk about, we the Caribbean, we are caught in, as a people, we are caught between which is still European, still a European dualistic worldview of the world. You're either communist or Marxist, okay? And so the post-colonial man, the Caribbean man, the African man, or the subaltern man, or woman, um, we must either be communist or capitalist. We must either be east or west. We cannot create our own. And if you go it alone or do your own thing, then they hit you with debt, or they infiltrate you with their operatives, CIA, so on and so forth. They withhold aid and so on and so forth. They slap embargoes on you, or they go to war, like what Russia is doing with Ukraine, because Ukraine decided to do what Jamaica is doing with China, go in bed with the enemy. And so we asked the question, what will Jamaica's future look like with this new president? And what can we learn from history? But what will Jamaica's future look? Can we trust China? Just as though we had trust the US and these and the IMF and the World Bank and so on, and that didn't bring us much development. It pushed us back. So now we go to the China. Now we're looking to the Chinese. Can we trust the Chinese? Because as much as Julian, or I don't know who he was, Christia said that, well, Chinese people had people here, but they were indentured laborers who they sent, who they wanted to whisk off. They didn't want to have any business with them until they decided, oh, there's opportunities to begin. We can influence the world by getting into the backyard of the Americas, Jamaica. But the fact of the matter is, and at the point, the reason why I brought up this whole, I was sharing my screen, this particular part of my screen with the timeline. I remember now talking about 1944 with World War, 1945, the formation of the United Nations and the Security Council beyond that. But after World War II, the superpowers in the world came together and created a new world order. China, of course, and now China quickly became part of that superpower. China controlled their part of the world. Russia controls their part of the world. The US and control their part of the world. Europe, you have Germany and so on. They have a piece of that part of the world. And there's an agreement, and that is Russia has invaded Ukraine today because Ukraine decided to do business with a Western power. Jamaica has decided to do business with a Eastern power and now has brought that Eastern power in the backyard of American dominated part of the world divide. Have you guys thought about that?
Sir, oh yeah, make it sound bad, but what has America done for us versus what the Chinese can do for us?
I mean,
So,
Bob
so
Marley
level the
said,
playing
I
pool,
don't look to the east
understand.
and I don't look to the west. I look to the I and I. I'm not saying, and I made the point. Well, oh, okay, we move from the east and from the west, and now let's go to the east. I mean, is it better? So, 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 so which devil is better? I mean, which Satan, which devil is better? So I guess that's the point you're trying to make, Christina. Christina, I can't get your name. I'm sorry.
Sir, just like Christina, it's the same thing. No
There we
matter
go.
what
I
that
mean,
fancy is.
right, but the point I'm trying, you said what America has done for us. They might say what America has not done for us. I mean, because the US have invested heavily in the Caribbean, but the Caribbean have also wasted the investment. And we're gonna do a class where we talk about the corruption index. And thank you so much. And Chantel, please remind me to add to the presentation, add to the Moodle, to the online portal, a lecture, and we're going to talk about that and links to the corruption perception index. We're going to talk about the corruption in Jamaica and the Caribbean, and okay, and because that has also helped to. And when you look at
Okay, sir.
when you look at corruption in the world and the corruption perception index, last class I taught, when you look at the corruption, the most corrupt countries are all those black and brown countries that were formerly that are now post-independent countries that were formerly colonized or Africa. Most of the okay, which is quite interesting. Um, the whiter you are, or the country with very few white people or no, sorry, very few black people or no black people and brown, they are the wealthiest and the least corrupt, with very little income inequality and high economic growth and development, high levels of poverty. When you study the issue of relative deprivation says that where you have high levels of income inequality, you have high levels of crime and violence. When you look at where crime and violence are heavily concentrated in the world today, you find that in those areas there are high levels of income inequality and high levels of poverty. So when you study Caribbean studies, you also want to look at the theory of relative deprivation. Write that down. That's a very important concept. I think I have a lecture to teach on that. That looks okay, relative deprivation, which I'm teaching it now. Now you go and do the work. Relative deprivation. But no, there's a lecture. There's something actually a right. There's something you're gonna notice that I'm populating the class, the online with stuff for you guys. But anyways, so that's the point I'm trying to make. So I'm not trying to frighten you. I know it sounds frightening, but as you know, we're academics. Not only are we academics, we're theologian academics, and we are prophets in the world. We're supposed to give light, give reason. You might hear me say in a podcast show, Zelensky was dumb. He was an opportunist who did not understand history. We must learn from history. That's why I wrote that book, Neoliberalism. That's why you guys must read the book. Okay, written by your own. That is well researched with some powerful minds that helped me write this book. Walter Litt, who wrote the economic history, the economic history of labor of the U.S. Rita Bernard, Philippe Bourgeois, so on and so forth. Very good book that looks at how the application of aid or the application of investments by the World Bank and the IMF, how that has helped to create the positioning of Jamaica and the Caribbean today. But anyway, beyond that, I'm saying to you though, the problem is there any way out? Is there any hope for Jamaica? And I wrote, one of your batchmates, I think 3 years ago, a student I taught wrote an article that looks at, is there any hope for Jamaica? Which was published in the Gleaner. Quite interesting. But we want to begin. But I think part of the problem is that in the Caribbean is a lack of unity. Nationalism is important, but unity is also more important. Africologists would even say that nationalism is not an African concept. And so one of you students says, yes, somebody says, yes, sir, I agree with you. We should have been, I agree with you, we should have gone about it in a united way. No, right. But what we did, we adopted the strategy of the masters that would help us to continue to keep us down. Very important point. Africologists, or when you look at the Afrocentric paradigm, they do not promote nationalism. So as much as when we talk about Pan-Africanism is not necessarily Afrocentric in the sense that it does not begin with, because when you study African societies from the time of Kamit and so on, they did not have civilizations, nation states, like in the way we understand nation states today. We see them as peoples. My twin brother was saying, oh, African people selling out them, black people sell out themselves. And we have always, I said, that's not true. Because first of all, African people never thought of themselves as African in the sense that as race. Race is a concept created within the Western mold to help to perpetuate, to justify and to perpetuate and to sanctify their sins. What am I talking about? Slavery was developed as, race. Race was a concept developed in the 1600s, the late 15 to 1600s, just as when they were about to embark on the transatlantic slavery. Yes, Professor, slave always existed, but not in the way it existed after the 1500s. Okay, in the transatlantic period, looking at people as property, as mules. Very important point. And they create, okay, and remember that they said that they were religious and people of grace. So now, when they wanted to enslave all these Africans and bring them all the way back to the Caribbean, they had to justify, the politicians and all these, had to justify to the church and so on, as to why are you bringing all these people and enslaving these people? And of course, so therefore, you have to create a theory, a philosophy to justify certain actions. That when you study colonialism, when you study power, when you study control, that's what control is. Control redefines a thing for what it is not. Don't let anybody define you or redefine you. But that is what they have done. They have redefined it out of its value. Redefined it out of its value. That went Fanon defined colonization as the depersonalization of persons. Depersonalization. Deperson. By the way, I said to you, nationalism is not an African concept in the way we think about African Afrocentricity and Afrocentrism. It's not, okay? It's not. Because they never thought of themselves as a race. They thought of themselves as peoples.
So, sir, quick question. If it is a case that race was created, quote unquote, by colonizers and or whoever created it, the concept of it, how do we now explain it?
How do we now explain the concept of race? Well, I mean, it's become part of the culture. Race has become part of a culture. Over time, it's become entrenched in society like anything else. It's become entrenched in our psyche. The idea of race, like anything else, had become part of entrenched in this, like anything else, it's become part of the culture, the way of life of the people. And as I said to you, when you study people like Michel Foucault, when you study people like Gramsci, who talks about intellectualism and how society developed culturally. You study people like sociology, Introduction to Sociology by Harry Lambus. And in Harry Lambus, they talk about sociology as a way of life of people, how culture developed, how society developed over time. It developed, okay, the dexterity, doing certain things, having institutions that drive home a particular ideology. Say, for example, you look at the Bible and how certain things weren't in the Bible, and then it finds its way in the Bible. And you create an institution and a knowledge base and a syllabus and a curriculum that help to facilitate a thinking. Okay. So, and that is why now people are now thinking about having critical race theory and critical thinking, because now critical thinking helps to facilitate a rethinking and revisiting history. You have to. So this class is about revisiting history. This class is about deconstructing ideas and thoughts. You're really we are this class is a part of post-colonial theory. We are where we are looking at how we're looking at the legacy of slavery, but not just the legacy of slavery, but a legacy um, that has been wiped out. And so we need to reclaim a legacy of sophistication and civilization that had been replaced from a legacy beginning with colonialism, with our conquest, our demise, and our doom. Okay? They have rewritten history to the point where when you study algebra, and by the way, if you watch the HBO series or HBO movie, Unsound Heroes, when now we are learning that there are 3 black women who were instrumental in developing the mathematical calculations that helped the US did the first excursion to the moon, the lunar trip to the moon. Okay, we didn't know that because they wanted to hide history. And so, say for example, I say to you, there was no such thing as Egypt. Egypt never existed. Okay, Egypt is a name given to Kamit, to the land of Kamit, to ancient Africa. Okay, or to the part of Africa that was dominated by Kamit. Okay, and they made them white. And when you watch movies about Egypt and pharaohs, they are white. Yes, but now when you start, now they are revisiting that, and when you start to go onto when you go onto the to the JTS online, when you read some of the articles I sent to you, or go to the Afrocentric paradigm. If you go to the reference list, there's reference lists of some of the readings that you can read. I'm going to do a presentation next week, not this week. I won't have time. That I'm going to do a book review. That I'm going to share a book review on Diops and Ashantis, the origin of African civilization. So, because I think many of you are interested in that, so I will do a special lecture next week. Next week when you come, I will do a special lecture that is a special presentation of a book review that I had done, that I had presented for the PhD in Africology, that reviews Diop's African civilization, the origins of African civilization. And I will also share some videos next week that looks at the Nubia people and so on. So you guys may find that, because I'm realizing you guys are going to find that interesting. I didn't intend to add that to the class, but I'm seeing that. That's good. But this is important. But as I said, when you study the Afrocentric paradigm, nationalism was never part of is never part of the Afrocentric paradigm of Afrocentricity or Afrocentrism. That's a Eurocentric concept. Okay. When you look about what's going on in Palestine, the people in Palestine, they don't have nation state really. And they don't really have a nation. They have a people. They just had a free land and so on, and a culture. But with the imposition of Israel, now for them, they're now trying to probably create nation states. But we'll talk some more about that. But we will stop right here. We're gonna take a quick 5 minutes break. When we come back, I'm gonna have each of you introduce yourselves. Okay, so each of you, I won't say anything else. Every the next the next time the next conversation you guys will all have a chance to share, to introduce yourself. I want to know who you guys are. Why are you in this class? What are your expectations? Nicholas wrote a beautiful reflection paper on the Afrocentric paradigm. I want you to share your reflection paper as you introduce yourself. Highlight some of the most important aspects of your paper. So if you have your paper, bring up your paper right now. Bring up your paper, or what I will do, I'm going to also share your paper on the screen. So as you introduce yourself, I'm going to bring up your reflection paper, and you can just probably highlight key parts of it. But the first one I read, I was impressed. I was touched, and I said, "This is beautiful. I have to let him," because Nicholas also talked about what he hoped to get out of the class, and how after reading the way how he started it, it was so succinct. It pulled me in. I'm like, this guy is a writer. I hope he contributes to the Gleaner and eventually develop your writing. We want to develop I'm a publisher. I publish other materials as well. If you guys want to publish materials, publish books, publish ebooks, audiobooks, start thinking about that. You don't have to go far. You have somebody who now you have resources. So start developing your writing. Nicholas, good. Nicholas Roberts, very good writing. Very good. I was impressed. We'll take a 5 minutes. We'll take a 10 minutes break. We come back at 5:15. But and the recording is in progress. I'm gonna ask you guys to introduce. Welcome back to From the Break to Caribbean Thought. This is I think this is the second lecture we are having, but this is the third class. I'm going to provide you guys an opportunity to introduce yourself. In doing so, I want you to share your reflections about the Afrocentric paradigm in relation to the study of Caribbean thought, or however way. Well, I don't care I just want to hear your thoughts about the Afrocentric paradigm. And probably I'm going to begin with Nick, since he was already speaking and I happened to have read his paper, and I thought his paper was brilliantly written. And so, Nick, welcome to Caribbean Thought. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, good good afternoon, good evening. My name is Nicholas Roberts. I am an advanced student coming from criminal justice at Portmore Community College. Before pursuing the degree in criminal justice, I was to join the force, but ended up going to college. And as you know, in order to graduate in college, you need work experience, right? So I ended up fortunately going to a family. I was supposed to go to criminal court, and I ended up going to family court, right? Their probation office, and where there is the profession of a probation officer, which is basically a social worker, right? And at first, I never did really amaze the job, to be honest with you. But then now, towards the end of my last week, I realized that I actually not just like it but love it, right? So that's how I'm now pursuing a degree in social work. So yeah. So let me go ahead and share my screen to the thing.
You're a first year student.
Not exact advanced. That's what them consider me, advanced student. So not first year. All right. A lot of the courses for a first year student, I'm not doing. Like I already done like half of or 3/4 of
Or is it in
the
third year?
social work. Yeah, something like that. I really don't know what year, but yeah.
Right. So
Let me.
you're from Portmore.
Yes, Portmore, St. Catherine. Yeah.
I'm from Portmore. I was just in Portmore. I'm always in Portmore when I go to Jamaica.
Oh, cool. We're in Portmore.
Hellshire High. Johnson Hill in Hellshire.
Ah, you live up the road, man.
You live in Johnson Hill?
No, but I live Greater Portmore.
Oh,
So
okay.
down yeah, basically.
Yeah, you're right. All right, but you
Uh
you
you
have
were just speaking just now?
yeah, sorry. So tell me about this reflection paper. It was very well written. I really appreciated it.
Alright, so funny thing, I actually started it after 10:30 last night. Yeah, but I had to read up from last week. I had to read up on the whole Afrocentric, what it's about and stuff like that, right? So all right, I'll start with the introduction. So in this reflection, I will look at obviously, you basically would say you would be looking what you would be looking at the Afrocentric paradigm done by Dr. Is it how you pronounce the first name? Is it Ama?
Amma.
Ama. And is it
Mazama.
Mazama?
Yes.
Mazama.
By the
Okay.
way, when you guys introduce yourselves, can you also, if you are able to show us your screen just for 1 second so we can see? Because we are remote, so I don't know what you guys see what I look like, right? But I don't know.
Sir, I'm
Yeah.
actually driving right now.
But later on at some time, I hope I get to see what you guys look like.
Yeah, I was to say that my camera on this device is not working. But obviously, when presentations and stuff is to I have access to laptops that have the camera working. So hopefully, during presentation you'll see me. But I don't have that right now. So
No
yeah.
problem. No problem.
Yeah, man. So I'll discuss. So basically, you said a couple like subheadings in class, and I totally forget about them, sir. So I was like, Jesus, I'm just going to make up something. And hopefully, them are right. So when looking it up, you would realize there are key principles. More than likely, sir, would want to hear about origins. In especially and its contrast with the Eurocentric worldview. Examine what that is about and all of that. And I'm also, in pursuing social work, at first when me hear about Caribbean thought me, I say, what is this? Like, me really need to do this. How can this, something to social work. Right. So my general knowledge at first, I didn't have a clue about what Afrocentric paradigm was. I never heard it. Two of them were together before in my entire life, neither apart. Probably paradigm in movies and stuff like that, Asian movies. But as Sir start to introduce the topic to us, I kind of start to kind of grasp it, realize that it's not just a topic but it's a movement. It's about the Africans' perspectives, cultures, and experiences in the study of history, sociology, education, and other disciplines. And that its aim is to challenge the Eurocentric narratives and assumptions because they have historically marginalized and misrepresented African contributions to the world, right? To the world civilization. The movement basically promotes the need to view African history and culture from an African-centered perspective rather than through the lens of European dominance. So at first, would go ahead and say, what is Afrocentric paradigm? You can scroll down, sir. Yeah, so the Afrocentric paradigm is basically about centering African experiences, values, and perspective in how we see the world. As Dr. Mazama would say, yeah, she actually says this. It's not I don't remember if she said this exactly, but I basically put in my own words. that it's not just a theory, it's a way of life that focuses on community, spirituality, and cultural pride. Right, as you can see, actually, put in the in-text citation there. Unlike Eurocentrism, right, which is all about individualism and material success, right? That's how, and because that's what we really, especially in that side of the world, really focus on, right? Success and and really, if you get what I'm saying, naturally the world will gravitate to the Eurocentric view. Right, so Afrocentricity focuses on the collective good and the interconnectedness of people. It's about reclaiming African history and culture, which have been ignored and distorted by Eurocentric narratives. For me, this is super powerful because intro exactly, Jerome, intro capitalism. So yeah, super powerful because it challenges the idea that European ways of thinking are the default or the best, right? You can go down, sir.
Like that part where you say, unlike
Yeah.
Eurocentrism, I like how you contrast it. But unlike Eurocentrism, which is all about, very important, I'm going to ask you this in the exam, individualism and material success.
Yeah.
Individualism, that is a smack against postmodernism,
Yep.
and liberalism. And it says, unlike Eurocentrism, which is all about individualism and material success, that's
Yep.
capitalism.
Yep.
Afrocentricity focuses on the collective good. And now, what talks about collective? Communism, yes. No, communism. So a lot of nationalists or Afrocentrists or Pan Africans and so on, at some point, were always promoting a kind of political system that was close to that of the Afrocentric way. And so many people thought, okay, I become a communist or whatever the case is. But the ways in which communism are practiced today isn't the real communism that Marxism promoted, in a sense. But anyways, Afrocentricity focuses on the collective good, the collective good, that communal experience, and the interconnectedness of people, not necessarily the competitiveness of people. It's about reclaiming African history. This is powerful. So I love how that was quite powerful. Powerful.
Yeah. So again, this the whole topic kind of new to me, but it's while I was reading, that's what I was seeing. You know what I mean? That's what I was seeing basically, and that's actually that's what made me going to know where did it come from, and I started with Afrocentricity never just pop out of nowhere. That this is now after reading everything and realizing what it's about. It never just pop out of nowhere. It's a response to centuries of colonialism, slavery, and racism that took away African contributions to history and culture. Right? Afrocentric scholars like Molly. All right, that name now. Sorry, go on with that name. Pronounce it. I know the last one is Asante, but
Sorry, it's Molefi Kete Ashanti.
okay, yeah, that name, right? And Dr. Mazama have been key in the developing of the movement, drawing the ancient African philosophies like I did look I saw that in the thing from ancient Egypt. I didn't really
Ba'at.
yeah, which is all and I look it up, which is basically about balance, truth, and harmony. Right, that was also in there. Afrocentric is
Yes,
about
it's about balance, truth, and harmony. Very important. The spirit, life, spirit. But by the way, I see you put from ancient Egypt.
yeah, that was there.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
like
put
how
it
you
in
put
bracket.
from Egypt from there.
You like it?
No, it's not from Egypt. If you're reading I'm a Mazama, she's not gonna say from Egypt. It will be from ancient Africa or from the time of Kamit,
Oh,
from ancient Africa or from ancient Kamit. Because
okay.
Egypt there wasn't a word. Egypt never is Egypt is the name given to the part of Africa where Europeans had dominated and wanted to rewrite African history because, of course, for them, Africa never had civilization, Africa never had history, Africa never did anything, and so they wanted to. If they couldn't destroy the part of Africa that said that was civil and sophisticated, so what they did, well, then rewrite history and rename that part of Africa and call it Egypt. So no,
Okay.
so it will be from ancient Africa or from Kamit. Okay.
Okay. Alright, we need to change that up. My apologies.
Yeah, man.
Natalie, so Sir had given this to us. Is a reflection basically. Sir gave us the Afrocentric paradigm to read, and he basically gave us a 2-page reflection to do. So that's what we're doing. I realized she sent that in the chat.
But by the
Alright,
way, no,
so
but not too wrong. But it's fine. If I had written the paper like this prior to 2024, I would have written the same thing. Okay, I am also learning more about Africa, Egypt, and our African history and their contribution to civilizations and so on. It's also new to me.
okay.
I'm now doing a PhD in Africology, so and I
Okay.
want to know more, and I wanted to go deep in this. But all right, so
Alright then.
go ahead.
Alright, so yeah, Afrocentricity is about pushing back against the idea that Africa has no history or culture worth studying. Sir, been actually, emphasizing on that, right? It's about saying, hey, we've been here, we've contributed to the world, and our stories matter. That's basically what Sir has been saying.
Wow, wow, absolutely, sir. Ah, you are such an amazing writer. Beautiful. Oh my God. I hope you wait, hold on. What you say you do again?
Well, it was criminal justice, but I'm doing social work now.
You don't write? You're not a writer?
I love assignments, but no, I'm not a writer.
Oh my God. Absolutely right. Beautiful. The way how you this is how people this is writing at its best. Amazing. I'm a writer, and I write a lot, and a lot of my stuff get published. I write, and I have to get my stuff. And you should write. Beautiful. Continue. Go ahead. Sorry for cutting.
Yeah. Yeah, I love research, but no, I'm not a writer. I love research though.
But I love how you say at the end. You said at the end, it's about saying, "Hey, we've been here. We've contributed to the world, and our stories matter." You are
Yeah.
doing an academic assignment, but it's not just academic. It's like reading a novel with with academic insights, but
Yeah.
in a novel way. Very good, and that is how I write, and I see you write it. This is
Yeah.
beautiful. This is
Thanks.
sorry, we don't have much time, so let's wrap up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, sir. That actually came from you. That's basically just the impression I was getting and what I was reading, basically.
Very
Africa
good.
debut and we
Yes.
not promote them and that's the vibe I'm getting. So let me just drop that in there.
Well, I want you to publish
Um
paper. Okay, send it. Yeah, you should publish it. Okay, send a letter to the Gleaner. Okay, all right.
oh
Send a
all
letter to
right,
the
sir.
Gleaner, or I'll publish it in my journals. But this is well written, a well written piece, short piece. Very good. But continue.
All right, let me be quick. So the Eurocentric worldview is based on European values like individualism, materialism, and straight line progress, often treating European culture as normal or best because there is, especially money. What's the word? Is monetary benefit, right? There's a huge benefit, and that's the reason why it always overthrow Afrocentric views while ignoring other perspectives. On the other hand, Afrocentric worldviews focus on community, spirituality, and seeing history as a cycle, putting African experiences and values at the center. Right? Eurocentrism became dominant because of colonialism and globalization, right? That spread European ideas to schools, religion, and media, creating a system where European ways of thinking just were seen as better slash superior, right? Afrocentric Afrocentricity, which challenges this system by celebrating African culture and history, has been pushed aside because it threatens the situation, right? It's because if we bring that, remind them that we have strong views when it relates to certain things in the world, right? Although it may not have monetary gain and some form of I guess in some areas it might. But anyway, let me continue. Yeah, you can skip, sir. You can go to the next one. So now in social work, I'm a social work student. I wanna know, by now I would have known, how this can help me, because throughout reading the whole thing, I'm like, all right, I understand what Afrocentrism is and everything now. How can this really, yeah. So as a future social worker now, I think the Afrocentric paradigm can, be a positive influence for how I approach my work. It's all about centering the people you're working with and valuing their culture and experiences. Because, sometimes we can counsel people with our own perspectives, right? For example, Afrocentricity's focus on community aligns perfectly with the social work goals of empowering people and fighting for social justice. Right? It also reminds me to challenge the systems that keep people down. Like racism, sir speak on that, and equality. Right? By using an Afrocentric lens, right, I can better understand the struggles of African American and other marginalized communities and work with them in a way that's respectful and empowering. Right? And my final thoughts, the Afrocentric paradigm, as Dr. Mazama explains it, basically about reclaiming African identity and challenging the dominance of Eurocentric ideas. It's about saying, what story they matter, what culture matter too. We're just not gonna be race no more. We're just Africa just debut as a continent who are full of black people. You know what I mean? No, it can't be that way. For me, this is super inspiring because as I think of my future as a social worker, it reminds me to, always center the voices of people I'm working with, and to fight for a world where every story matters. You know what I mean? Every story is valued. I don't feel like it's fair for, in reading everything and understanding everything now, I don't think it's fair for the Afrocentric view to just be, just under the rock in that sense. So yeah, that's basically it for me.
Thank you. Very good. I love how you said that, how you personalize it by saying, as a future social worker, I think the Afrocentric paradigm can be a positive influence for how I approach my work. It's all about centering the people you're working with and valuing their culture and experiences. That's so powerful. For example, Afrocentricity focuses on the community, and community aligns perfectly with social work's goal of empowering people and fighting for social justice. Very powerful. So this is good. Very good work. Oh my God, this is good. This is good. I love it. And when I was learning about Afrocentrism, the Afrocentric paradigm, and of course, the Afrocentric paradigm was developed by Ashanti, and it's more about disciplines. It's really developed in African institutions, and it came about as an attack. I mean, later on, when you start to do more critical and advanced studies, you learn that there was an attack against Black studies, African American studies, and Black studies, and Black history, and many established disciplines, history, European history, and other disciplines were attacking and challenging certain studies and departments that were teaching Black studies and African American studies and so on. They were saying that, well, they're doing the same thing we're doing, and so attacking them and shutting them down or whatever the case is. So I think, in a sense, Ashanti found a way to mitigate that by creating a paradigm, because once you attach or apply a paradigm, a pattern, a modus operandi, a science to the thing that sets it apart from any other discipline, then you can't attack it anymore as a way to destroy it, as a way to get rid of it. Because although they were teaching a history that was different, it was still a history that was not centering on the African experience. It was still using Eurocentric lens and modes. And so Ashanti and other academics started to now adopt a paradigm. But of course, the idea of Afrocentricity started before that. People would say, I mean, some people would say that W.E.B. Du Bois developed the idea of Afrocentric or Afrocentricity. People would say that, but I must say, when I started learning about it, I run a program. I can't say much about the program I run because of whatever. I can't say much about it. I can only say I run a program. And the program I run, once I started learning, and by the way, Dr. Mazama was my professor. I know her very well. So I've met the woman that writes about the Afrocentric paradigm. But I said to her, I appreciate learning about Afrocentric paradigm and the idea of agency. Because now I went back to work and I'm having a conversation with my colleagues, with my staff, with the professionals in the industry about how we can apply the principles of this Afrocentric paradigm, the principles of Afrocentrism or Afrocentricity that talks about raising African consciousness or raising one's consciousness so that people can develop agency, the ability to work in one's behalf for one's betterment or self-improvement, and valuing people and so on and so forth. So of course, because now the population that we work, majority of the people that we work with are Black and brown people, and they of African ancestry. So this is really interesting. So now we're exploring, and I'm even utilizing that in how we administer public health, social work, case management, and so on and so forth. Because I also have a history in social work and case management, and I coordinate programs, and I've run case management programs and hire case managers and social workers who I've helped to coordinate and direct, and never had this. Once I learned about this, never had it been so powerful. Janelle, you are next. You can say what you need to say, and then I would like for you to share your reflection paper. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm not anywhere near where I can share it right now, sir. I'm on my phone, and I don't have my laptop with me. I'm not home. But I can share from what I know from my head because I read the book. I read the what you sent us. I have a question for you, sir. Learning about Afrocentricity, and reading I don't have to call it a book because it's like part of the book, but what I've read so far from what you sent me, sir, it has really added to what I've been thinking or opening my mind up to for the past couple of I would say months, because I've been learning about like African American history and learning about African history because I love like learning about history. I watch a lot of documentaries and I read a lot. But do you think, sir, what makes it even harder for us to get back to the origins of our culture and our identity and community and our realities as African people is because we've spent majority and so many years trying to fight for freedom and rights. Like, I'm talking about colonialism when we have to fight for everything. When they have already taken it from us and reclaimed it as their own, and giving us less rights. We spend so many years and decades fighting for just basic rights and just for basic needs that it's taken us so far away from our culture. So with us trying to get by there, I think that's really a main barrier, because even before colonialism, there was, in Africa, you have the trading system, you have really still living, the community, the culture, the villages, everybody was trying to live as one and preserve the culture. And sir, I'm even learning about how Afrocentricity could work with even the whole I don't even know about metaphysics, sir. I'm learning about metaphysics as well, and like how back into the African ancestry with like the spiritual realm and the physical realm. That's a whole thing. But I'm talking about, like, I think that's what's holding us back, holding a majority of people back. Like, a lot of people want to learn and want to go back to the culture, but they've spent so many time fighting. I don't think they don't they don't they've strayed so far away from it. I don't think they remember what they're fighting for anymore. And I think that's why Afrocentricity is so important, to try to bring back that community and so forth. Yes, sir. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know if you understand what I was trying to say, sir, but yes.
I didn't realize my mic was on mute. So I was trying to say something to you just now. I did find your paper actually. Janelle Simpson. Let me open it here. Janelle Simpson reflection paper. You want me to share it with the class?
I don't know, sir.
I'll share it.
I don't know if it'll be that impressive,
Dr.
but
Anna
just
Mazama,
from
the Afrocentric paradigm speaks to the loss of African people's identity and culture due to a European way of thinking. She focuses on Afrocentricity and the need to reclaim the African-centered epistemology. Notice, I like how you say the need to reclaim the African-centered epistemology. What is the African-centered epistemology, Janelle? Dr. Mazama discusses that African people over the years have completely adopted the views and ways of Western countries without even recognizing it. This is due to the displacement of African people from their culture and way of life. They are then integrated into a reality where they are forced to live their lives with a Western worldview and perspectives that were not designed for them. Now, I mean, I know I don't think we're speaking in very general terms. I don't know if we've gotten to any specificity. And that is why part of the Afrocentric, that paradigm speaks about metaphysical. It speaks about the epistemological, at the epistemological level. It means then, it means we have to go deep. Now we have to get to the specific. We can't just, in order for us to achieve Afrocentricity or Afrocentric goal, or using the Afrocentric paradigm, part of that paradigm, and she talks about okay, and a standardized way of doing things and seeing things. So, and you talk about African-centered epistemology, a way of doing it, a way of seeing. That's why they were saying, say, for example, you ask the question, was Marcus Garvey Afrocentric? Did he apply? No, he didn't use Afrocentric paradigm, just came about in the 1980s in African Institute. Okay. But was he Afrocentric then? Because Afrocentric paradigm is different from being Afrocentric. Afrocentric paradigm, yes, it's a way of seeing things, but the paradigm is it is within academic institutions. So, say for example, you're teaching Africology. As I said, you're teaching a particular African study, but it is within that paradigm, within that epistemological framework. So a framework that does not rely on a European or Eurocentric ideology or system. First of all, you might ask, what is that system then? We now have to now learn what is that system, because you're asking, how can we achieve that after years of brainwash? And then Dr. Mazama asks us in a class, after you are exposed to the truth that there's a brainwash, why do you still continue to live out that system and embrace that system? And she calls it, there's a particular word she uses, like there's an ambivalence where people are exposed to something and know something, haven't been aware of how. And then I said to you, some of us are sidestepping the issue. I mean, what about our theology? What about our missional responsibility? And what we're saying now also challenge that and identity. Of course, I did a paper and I did a reflection. If you go to the neoliberal.com, you might see it, that looks at Afrocentrism and Afrocentric. And I talked about that. I said, okay, well, I mean, shall I now keep the name Renaldo McKenzie? Should I now change the name? I live. Dr. Amma Mazama was not always Amma Mazama. She changed the name to an African name after she was many in the 90s, I think 70s and 80s. Many of these academics and scholars were now adopting African names. So now you have Malafia Ashanti, Diop. They were that he wasn't always Diop. Ashanti wasn't always Ashanti. After being exposed, he became baptized, and by baptized is a theoretical baptism. Not really. He didn't really go into waters, and then they changed their names and took on African names in a sense because they're trying to do as a way to adopt the centering. But it's quite. But the epistemology. What is epistemology? We're gonna talk about epistemology. Is the way we come to know something. Is the idea of truth. What is the African truth? What is the African system of life? How does the African come to know anything? What is the system of worship? Um, when you look at Roman Catholicism, the idea of the dead comes from how in African traditions they venerated their ancestors. I apologize that this is, but let me finish. But you continue to say that Afrocentricity focuses not on not only preserving African culture. Am I recording? I'm recording, right? Right, guys? Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Afrocentricity focuses on not only preserving African culture and experiences, but also replacing the thinking and feeling of European ways with authentic African culture. So, for example, I said if African people know that it was always the African way to appreciate gardening and flowers and have beautiful aesthetics, trees and stuff, then they would not think twice about promoting that in their communities. You go into some communities, they do that. They say, oh, that's about white or certain people should do that. Or the idea of littering and disposing one's garbage and so on and so forth. Or you might say some people like Louise Bennett Coverley tried to embrace this African centeredness with her embrace of patois. Yet in Jamaica and many Caribbean societies, um, uh, your ability to be able to speak the Queen's English or Spanish is a determinant of one's social position or social category. No, Dr. Mazama aims to not only give the African people their consciousness back, but their voices as well, and to make the voices of the Europeans just as normal voice. I love that. And not only the voice, not only, and not the only, and not the only, or wisest one. So it's not that Afrocentricity downplays the European as not having a voice. It recognizes the European as having a voice, but as a normal voice, just like any other, just like the African voice. Okay, African traditions, African worship is just as normal as European Christian worship. That's now now let us push it to its logical end now, guys. Let's not sidestep it. Let's not tiptoe around the issue. The African people need to be at the center of their history and knowledge and not just be from the outside looking in. Western worldview has dominated the way how some cultures view the world, which can be said for the African people. They have influence over education, social services, and governance. And then I talk about, and that's why Frantz Fanon talks about the history of man. How do we begin the new history of man? He said we must begin a new history of man, one as tabula rasa, a blank slate. When we negotiate our independence, it should not be even be negotiated. In fact, there should be no talk as receiving independence, because receiving independence, we are all freed men. It shouldn't be a gift. Any man that granted on the man independence, that man will forever see that man as God, because he grants him something. He grants him freedom. He grants him his humanity. He grants him, so he's forever beholden to him. But the Haitians never did that. The Cubans never did that. And that is why their independence, or their position in the world today, is one of strife. Because the US, sorry, let me not say that, because some post-independent country, some postmodern or developed country, one of the former masters made it so, ensure that they remain like that. But they will work with Jamaica and Barbados and Trinidad and so on, because they continue to adopt Western persuasion. Anyways, according to Heather, is it Heather? Janelle, they claim that these truths are accepted and applied to everyone when they are specific to different cultures. This is a way to remove traditional cultural belief system to implement their own. This is why Afrocentricity is important. Individuals often misrepresent what Afrocentricity means by not completely understanding it, or by trying to fuse it with the Western and world structure. Now, we're going to finish with Janine's paper here. This is important. Janine says that individuals often misrepresent, and I'm happy that you're saying this in your reflection as well. You're pointing this out, because I would have pointed out already. You pointed out saying that individuals often misrepresent what Afrocentricity means, and that is true. And when you go on the JTS online, you're going to see I have a paper pointing out the inaccuracies and what's correct about Afrocentricity. And then below that, I talk about the seven basic cultural characteristics according to Karenga. What are the seven basic cultural characteristics of the African? I talk about those seven. Quite interesting. You can go and read that. I'm going to present on it, but later on in the course. But I won't. I mean, next week, because we will continue with this class, because each of you will get to present. I only have. I'm gonna wrap up the class, but give me about 10 minutes to wrap up. Individuals often misrepresent what Afrocentricity means by not. What does she say here? She said, Janine says, by not completely understanding it, or by trying to fuse it with Western culture structures. Persons who do not understand fully what Afrocentricity means might think it aims to reject other people's culture, but the true importance of Afrocentricity is to elevate, inspire, and now this is the most important part, and legitimize the African culture. It gives legitimacy to it. Now you may ask the question, why do we need a paradigm or Afrocentricity to legitimize anything? Okay. But in this society, in the Western world, in the world that we live in, it provides legitimacy to the African culture and African perspective, just as our Western have done to their own. So I guess we're following the Western way. Julian Barrett, please go ahead.
My point is not in relation to what you're saying here. I just have some concern since it's my first class and as it relates to this paper. So I was raising my hand until you're finished, sir.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Afrocentricity can be seen beyond the scope of just an academic theory. It can be used for the psychological and intellectual liberation of Western people. Bob Marley says, emancipate yourself from Western. Sorry. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. So, when you think about the Afrocentric paradigm by Dr. Mazama and all It was within the Afrocentric paradigm was in the 1980s. She's writing this paper in the late 1990s, 2000s. The idea of Afrocentricity was from the 1960s. All of this psychological intellectual liberation, the Rastafari movement, what started from the 1930s. Um, um, and there was a lot of the negritude movement started just around the same time as well. But by the 1960s, I think the 1980s was reggae music started in the 1960s. So it's quite interesting. We're going to talk about these trends later on, these currents that has given rise to our history, or that's influenced some of the ideas and thoughts in terms of Caribbean history. But Afrocentricity, but if you look at all of these great influencers, people like Rex Nettleford and Ramesh Ramsawa and Manley and um, so on, and you hear their ideas and their thoughts and their song and their music all as a song of struggle and revival and hope. And Bob Marley is always talking about emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And he was a prophet, and his music influenced so many people. And one can only imagine whether or not his influence, his song, also helped to influence the Afrocentric paradigm, also helped to give shape and to give rise to this Afrocentricity. Because part of this is a change of consciousness. You can only develop agency. You can only develop agency when you are able to work, when you develop a kind of consciousness. And the Rastafari religion and the whole Rastafari reggae music and so on, it was always pointing us back to Africa, in a sense, to help us to create that, was centering us and to create legitimacy for our culture. But then many Christians and Jamaicans look down on Rastafarianism and African traditions and revivalism because there was always this European attack to continue to make it illegitimate, to invalidate ourselves, our culture, our identity. But but Rastafari and all these cultures help to create legitimacy for the music, which is quite interesting. And Bob Marley, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. And so part of the Afrocentric paradigm or Afrocentricity, they said that is not just academic, because W.E.B. Du Bois said that it is many of this consciousness can only change within academic institutions, within colleges. And he created a fraternity that focuses on scholarship, and said that if African people apply themselves to scholarship education, then they can help to create change. And he was at odds with Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois because they weren't educated, but they had a huge following, and they were at odds. And W.E. Du Bois was said to be part of one of the reasons why he was sent back to Jamaica. He was deported because of mail fraud, but it was because of W.E. Du Bois and infighting within the whole nationalist Pan-Africanist movement why Marcus Garvey was deported to Jamaica. But yet part of the thing was that W.E. Du Bois said that it's through education or collegiate education that you can develop a consciousness that leads to an agency. Marcus Garvey was not focused on collegiate education, and he was rough on the edges, but he still adopted a kind of supremacist ideology or structure or form or way. So he wasn't Afrocentric still, Marcus Garvey, but neither was W.E.B. Du Bois. When it comes to Western ideas, there is a trend that can be seen where they like to be neutral and objective in their view, but Afrocentricity is different, as the main function is empowering African communities. Even today, it's prevalent that the West seems to push its ideals while stating that they are welcoming to all different cultures, so on and so forth. In conclusion, the African people have been conditioned to view themselves through the European worldview, which is true, which has discouraged them and limited their ability to explain their realities. Dr. Mazama states how important it is for African people to reclaim their identity but become independent thinkers. Afrocentricity should be seen as the blueprint and become a complete reorientation of the African thought processes and education geared towards an African-centered worldview. Thank you so much, Janelle.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
I don't think we have time for any more persons to introduce themselves, but what we will do is that next week we'll pick up from here, all the other students. I hope that all of you will get to present, and I'll probably will give each of you five minutes to introduce yourself and to present your papers. And then I want you also to begin reading again the preface and chapter 1 of Neoliberalism, book 1. The preface. We will continue with what is the Caribbean, how we define the Caribbean. We will also look at what's post-colonialism and post-colonial theory. Julian, is that the same Julian that just spoke? Okay, I have you.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to stop right here. And now, do we have to take care of any administrative stuff? Are all of you in a group? If not, is Chantel here? Chantel is, for those of us who are joining us for the first time, Chantel is the lecturer's assistant. And then we also have a class rep who is Chantal as well. So you guys can, if you can get through to me, you can get through to Chantal or Chantel. If you're not on the, they are also the WhatsApp. You can also communicate with us on the WhatsApp group. Julian, what's your question?
Sir, how soon do I need to submit this paper that you're talking about today?
That should have been submitted by midnight.
Midnight tonight?
Last night.
Oh, sorry, it's I was not ready. I applied for the course, but I was not registered until late. So I'm just now able to join the class this week.
Okay. All right. Well, can you do the paper? How soon? Well, how soon can you do the paper?
I'll work on it over the weekend, sir, and see if I can send it off to you early. Early next week, I have some other deadlines because I'm doing 4 other courses. I have some deadlines for early next week as well, but I'll try my best to work on it for early next week.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For me,
early next week.
I have a presentation Monday. I have one on Wednesday. Sir, it's tight. It's tight for me to give you the exact date now because I'm just made aware of this paper.
All right. Just touch me. Okay, fine. Just that's fine. Try and get it in before the next class. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Before the next class is fine. Anybody, Heather, you had a question?
Sir, these reading materials that you're talking about, are they on the model?
Well, yes. I think, say for example, if you're looking at the screen now, if week 1's let me see. Yeah, it's on there. Let me see. Where is it? I just posted it up today. The Afrocentric paradigm. The links to it is on here. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. The Afrocentric paradigm right here. It's on here. Journal of Black
Okay.
Studies. You can just introduction to the Afrocentric paradigm. You can click it in and it goes straight and it goes straight
to the article. Okay, thank you, sir.
My own reflection is there as well, which I will share with you. But my reflection is going to be in 2 parts. Part 1 was what was an initial reflection when the first time I was exposed to it. The first time I was exposed to it was in about September. So I had some questions and I battled with it a bit. And then I slowly come around, but I'm still battling with it. So, and then there's another part. There's part 2 that looks at the inaccuracies of Afrocentrism and the 7 basic African cultural characteristics of Karinga. You don't have to read that right now since you're doing a lot of reading, but we will get into it next week after you guys finish sharing. And then Caribbean thought, list of influences are there. Post-colonialism. Yeah, so yeah. But even I'll post up all the other readings for you guys. That you have links to other resources and materials. I have a paper here with some references. You can check out the references.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
List. I have a reading list about the Afrocentric paradigm, the Afrocentric idea, the story of social change, Ashanti, Dark Ghettos by Kate Clark. And eventually I will provide more list of reading materials. And there's a book review I'm going to share with you next week that looks at the African civilization. That would provide you with some more foundational knowledge and some resources that talks about uh, how what we think of Egypt, which is that really Africa or the land of Kamit, how that is linked to the other parts of Africa. Diop wrote a book that looks at the African origins of the history of African origins, and he uses craniology as a concept, as an evidence to justify the linkage that Egypt or Kemet has to Africa. But I'm going to post that up, and you will have it access to it. So, Nikisha, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. I heard just now that you said that chapter one of the
I'm
book.
not hearing you clearly.
Okay, you said that we're to read chapter one.
Oh yeah, yeah. The textbook is neoliberalism. I noticed that I don't have it on J. I don't have it. Oh, let me see. Oh, I did.
Guys, the book is on Amazon. If anybody has Amazon Kindle, you can get the book for free if you already have an account. If not, then it's I think $40 something for the audiobook. But once you already have audio or Kindle, the book is free on Amazon.
But yeah, it's on the Audible. It's also, I mean, it's also available. You can contact Chantel. She can also tell you how you can get the book. You can also get the book from the professor, from me, from my company, the store.theneoliberal.com. Or you can call the Neoliberal store and make arrangements, and we'll ship the book out to you. Probably it will take a couple of days to get there. Amazon, you can buy the book on Amazon too. I think the hard copies. I heard it takes about 2 weeks for the book to come to you guys. But if you want, you can still buy the book, and in the meantime, you can get a hold of the preface. If you go to the library, you probably can get the book, but many of you are probably not there. So if you go online, I think the book is available. The preface is available online. But what I will do for you guys, okay, this is what I'll do for you guys. I'm going to make the preface and chapter one available to you guys. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So the next reading for you guys is for you guys to read the preface and chapter one of neoliberalism. Okay. So last week, the reading was for you guys to read the Afrocentric Paradigm by Mazama. This week, I'm asking you guys to read Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance. Not the entire book, because the book is deep and complex. I only want you guys to read the preface and chapter one. Okay? How does that sound? In fact, hold on. I'm wrapping up the class now. I'm sorry that I'm going over.
Sir, quick question. Somebody's asking if we're supposed to write a reflective piece on next week's assignment as well, next week's reading as well.
Yes.
So it's another two-page reflective piece on whatever we read.
Yes.
Okay. Also, Chantel said today that she was driving, but she took the register already, so she'll contact you with any other information.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Chantal. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate your help, and I really do, by the way. And yeah, so I want you guys to read from chapter one is the introduction. So the introduction and the preface. So yeah, for this week, I want you guys to read the introduction and the preface of neoliberalism. Right? Now, the thing is, I don't even think that. No, you guys don't have to do a reflection paper. next week.
Sir, sorry about that. Chantal here. Question. Their books. It's I know the preface is on it's on Google, but does it also give paid the chapter one as well?
No, no, I don't think so.
You have to get the book itself.
Yeah.
Just a clarity, sir. You said that you will let us have access to chapter one and the preface of the book, or just the preface of the book.
Well, you know what? You guys should just you guys by now should get the copies of the book, but I'm setting up myself. I'm doing too much. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. That's a lot because I'll have to copy and paste and all that stuff. I know the preface is available because Amazon had a look inside when the entire preface is available. I don't know if the introduction is available. The library has the book. The books are available in some libraries online. I'm gonna try and work with JTS. Does JTS have an online library?
Yes, they do.
They do, where they have books and stuff.
Yes, there places are there that we access like past papers and I think books. So there's an online thing.
Oh wow. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to arrange for the school to get a copy of the audiobook and the Kindle on there. I didn't know that. So I'm gonna buy a copy of the book for the school and have it available in the library system, one copy. I don't know how quickly they will have it, but I'll try and do that. But it's available online. It's available at the Neoliberal store. You can call Chantel. She'll send it over. Um, but uh, but the preface you can read for now, and the introduction might be some of the introduction I think might be available on Amazon as well. Okay, but try and we hope to get into it later on in the semester. Go ahead, Chantel.
Sorry, I did send them the Amazon link that they could go to find the book to purchase it, and there's also the preface on that list on that thing there as well that they can read.
Yes.
About the book. So once I've already sent in the group, you can click on and then read it.
All right, good. If you're having problems, let me know. We can probably.
My concern is I did not plan for this. I didn't know that we need to purchase a book. So what about who cannot purchase it this week for us to have the material? That's why I asked the question earlier. I knew that Chantel sent the link for Amazon, but what about who is not in a position to purchase the book this week? We will be at a disadvantage. That's why I asked.
Well, I mean, you always purchase books when you in college education. Purchasing books is you purchase books, or you try and access books. Of course, we always talk about the socioeconomic positioning of people, their ability to get education and to access the resources so that they can successfully complete their collegiate education. That's all. And so the teacher has to be mindful of that. I'm mindful of that. So, but at the same time, you still have to get the book as soon as you can. What we provide the library, the books is available in the library. I think the library has 2 or 3 books. Where are you, Nikisha? Nikisha,
yes, sir.
are you in Jamaica?
Yes, I'm in Jamaica, sir.
Kingston?
St. Catherine, near to Kingston.
Oh, the book is at the library. Why don't you go by the library, JTS library?
Okay, I'll do so.
All right. Yeah, man, the book is there. You can. So if you can go.
And for those of us who joined today, would it be possible for her to send the link again in the WhatsApp chat?
Yeah.
For those who were today to the chat.
I will do so. I will sample, sir. I will do so.
All right.
So the book is available on Kindle, and I think if you go on Google Books, it's available like the first. And I don't even know why my publishers are allowing so many pages available. I think I'm seeing the entire preface and part of the introduction available. Ridiculous. Anyways, check it out. But as I said to you, if you're still having difficulties, let me know. If after you go to the library, you're having problems, let me know, because I also gave a copy of the book to Erica Campbell, so she can, and I think she may have put it in the library, a copy of it there. So there are several copies here in the library. and I'm shipping some more out. So over the next few days or weeks. So, but those who can get it from Amazon, get it from Amazon. If you can get it on the Kindle, it's on the Audible. But we want to talk. We want to come up with a definition of how do you define the Caribbean? Having been exposed to the Afrocentric paradigm. Of course, in the book, I say, when you think of the Caribbean, you hear of beautiful islands of paradise with sun, sea, sand, reggae music, Irish people like Usain Bolt, who are having the very best time of their lives. But this book questions this very motif. What am I talking? That's a deep concept, quite palpable and powerful and poignant. When we think or hear of the Caribbean, we think of beautiful island of paradise with sun, sea, sand, reggae music island. But this book questioned this very motif. And then I continue on. So this is quite interesting. We get into that. Next week, we'll continue with you guys sharing. So I won't talk in the beginning. Next week, the next person would share about the Afrocentric paradigm. And then after you guys talk about the Afrocentric paradigm, then we will continue talking. We will talk about neoliberalism and post-colonialism and pan-Africanism and neoliberalism. What are those? And then what is the Caribbean and who determines this, and complete looking at our overview to the class. All right. The class promises to be exciting. We okay. Put on your seatbelt, brace for the ride. And thank you guys so much. Take care. Any last word from you guys?
So at some point in time, I'm going to ask for you to explain why you keep saying Egypt is a made up thing. I am very perplexed by you constantly saying that. I need to understand why you say that.
Wow, you've never heard that before? It's the first time?
Nope. Nope.
I know. I was like that the first time too. Okay.
No, because if all right, is it the name of Egypt that you're saying is manufactured, or
The
the place
idea on
itself, or the
Egypt is
color
that
of the
there
people?
is no Egypt. Egypt is
But
made.
it's in the Bible.
Egypt is not Egypt. Egypt was the land of Kamit. Okay. Egypt was translated from a language to something else. Okay. Please remember that you read the word Egypt is an English word. Okay. First of all, Africa and Egypt, they never use English. It's translated into our language. And when they translate, okay, but there was no Egypt. When you look at Egypt today, trust me, I was just as baffled. We're going to talk about it further. Oh, that's what I need to do. Yes. After you guys share and present, I will share a little bit. I will talk about that. I will share as I said to you, I'm going to share with you my book review, a book review that looks at Diop, the ancient civilization. So we'll get into it when I show you literature, but I'm taking my time with you. But for now, know this. Yes, there was never the way we think of Egypt was never the Egypt. Was never Egypt. And in fact there was no country Egypt. Okay. Egypt is a made up name that was given to the land by Europeans. Okay? Good. So I know many of these things shock your world. I know they shock your world, but you have to be open. Have to be open. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I have been at that point in my life. My life has been designed, and it's just what I appreciate. But I give God thanks every day because now you're at a different level. You are more humbled when I'm telling you, it changes your character, your outlook, and so on. I'm telling you, man. Chantel, I'm telling you, I'm giving God thanks that you guys I'm able to share this with you because not many people are aware of this and not many people want to be aware of it. But even after they are aware of these things, my professor asked me that question. After people are exposed to these things and to the knowledge why is it that they don't change? And then she shares a story and I'm going to share you. And later on in the course, if I have time, I'll share it. Because this course is not Africology, it's Caribbean thought. So we're not going to dwell on African studies. We're going to move beyond that and talk about Afropolitanism and cosmopolitanism. Because what of the influence of India? What of the influence of China? What of the influence of the nativists? Yes. What of the influence of the hybrid people who have now become one out of this one culture? This hybrid culture has created a dynamic cultural experience that with reggae and so on and so forth. Anyways, shall we stop here? Thank you guys. Take care and see you next week.
Okay, sir, you too.
Yeah.